Today we are learning how to use both sine and cosine to make circular motion. So far we've just been doing oscillating motion, and now we're going to do circular. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do two variables at the top now, x and a y. Set them equal to 0. Just like before, we are going to increment those variables by 1. So now they're constantly increasing. Now for each of those, we're going to make a variable that's the sine of each of them. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call it sine x. We'll say sine x equals the sine of x, right? And sine y equals the sine of y, right? And now we're going to draw an ellipse at sine x, sine y, and we'll put it at, let's see, we'll make it, 50, 50, and just see what happens. What is happening? So you can see there's an ellipse up here in the corner, and it is moving. It has some motion. Now we can move it down here by adding 200 to each of those, which will put it in the center. So we took the sine of both of those, and it's kind of shaking like that. But what we really want to do is we want to use cosine as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the cosine of y. So we'll call this cosine y. And we'll take cosine of y, and that's going to be our y variable. And now it's hard to notice, but this circle is actually moving in a circular motion instead of just in one direction. And it's moving really fast. So there's two things we need to do. We need to map the sine and cosine values to make them bigger. And then we're going to slow things down so it's not so crazy fast. So instead of using the sine x and cosine y variables, we're going to map these variables. So instead of being -1 to 1, they're going to be larger values. We'll try 0 to 400 first, and if that doesn't work, we'll change it. So we need new variables. Let's think of two other names. Maybe we'll call it x2. So x2 will equal the map of sine x, and instead of being -1 to 1, which is the original minimum maximum, let's do 0 to 400 and see what happens. And then we're going to use this x2 variable down here instead, x2. So we got some crazy stuff happening, and it's hard to even see what's going on. But let's do the y2, and then we'll try and make sense of it. So y2 equals the map of, and this time we're going to do cosine y, because that's what's happening here, right? Map of cosine y, which is also -1 to 1, and this time we'll do it from 0 to 400, just like we did with the x. And then I have to change this to y2. And now let's see what we have. So now you can see it's moving in a circle, but we're way down here. That's because of these 200 offsets. We don't need those anymore because of the map. So now let's get rid of them and see what we have. Now we have circular motion, but hey, it's really fast. How can we slow it down? Do you remember? If you guessed changing the increments of these two variables, you are correct. Let's change it to a small number, 0.5. That's half of what it is. It's getting a little better, a little more circular. Let's change it to 0.05, really small. Oh, check that out. It's cool. I like it. Let's go even smaller. What about 0.01? Nice. Look at that. And now we've created circular motion. Now, can I get it more on the screen? What if we change this to just 300 instead of 400? Cool. It's not centered though. How could we center it? What if we did 100 to 300? What would that do? We shifted the minimum up 100 and the maximum down 100, and now we're centered on the screen. Now let's just customize things. Let's give ourselves a black background. Let's give our background a little transparency. What about more transparency? 10 is cool. Let's do something with our ellipse. Let's say no stroke. What does that do? Oh, cool, look at that. Now we're getting trails. Now what if I did a fill of 200, 180, 0, some yellowy orange color? Neat. And now we've got circular motion. Maybe I can go a little bit faster and see what the trails look like. Cool. All right, I'm going to stop there. What did we do? We did a second variable. We also incremented it just like the x variable. But instead of taking the sign of the second variable, we took the cosine. That's how we get the circular motion, sine and cosine working together. Instead of it oscillating back and forth, it's now moving in this circle. And then we've mapped those values, because normally it's just a tiny little circular motion between -1 and 1. We've changed -1 to 1 to 100 to 300, and that's how we get this larger circle. And then finally we use these map variables in an actual shape. All right, that's all for today. Make sure you've customized this. Give it your own colors. Maybe try doing the transparency and no stroke for some trails, or try your own stuff. If you really want to get fancy, you might even just copy and paste this ellipse and change your, swap your variables around like this, and see what you get. Boy, that's cool. If you really want to get extra super fancy, what if you did something like this? Neat. You too. You can do this as well if you want. This is just me kind of riffing on getting creative at the end of the lesson. All right. See you next time.